to share it publicly, but we do it anyway for archiving purposes. And yes, during the next hour we will have some insightful presentations regarding or touching innovation policy issues. And after those presentations, hopefully also some good discussion on them. And my name is Markku Mikkola, I'm from VTT, and I will guide you to this event. First, some background on these events. And as you can see, the idea is that this is not only one of a kind or one-off event, but we aim to have a series of events on this innovation policy issues. And this idea here is for this series that experts and people can openly present and discuss these policy issues, and very briefly during breakfast time. And the purpose is to give attention to innovation policy it deserves and share knowledge, and also use this event as a platform for discussion and cooperation. And the idea is that it's not VTT only, so speakers can be invited from other organizations, at least from 2, and anybody can attend. And the idea also is that we organize this regular basis, so perhaps quarterly or as a pop-up, depending on the needs. And then to today's agenda or program, first I will start and briefly introduce the project SMEthod, which is kind of a background for this event. So it's a research process we have carried out during the past 2 years. And after my intro, my colleague Matthias Desruver will present some of the insights and findings from our project. And then we continue to our keynote. Hannu Kemppainen from Business Finland will present an SME funder perspective on relevant policy trends. And we really appreciate that Hannu has had time to participate to this, because I suppose we all know that due to pandemic, the government and all the support agencies are having pretty hectic times at the moment. So very pleased to have Hannu with us. And then last but not least, Kalle Kantola from VTT tells something about VTT's approach to support SMEs and cooperate with them. And that's the presentation part. And then after the presentations, we will also hopefully have time for discussion. And regarding that discussion, I kindly suggest you put, if any questions or comments come to your mind, you put it to the chat, and then we can look at the end the comments there and questions and raise some to be discussed. And then briefly about our project, SMEthod. It's carried out under Horizon 2020, and there specifically in InnoSup call. InnoSup is abbreviation of innovation support, I assume, and so that the InnoSup program is about testing new approaches and methods to support innovation in EU. And under that program, there was a call, Innovating SMEs, Segmentation Along Life Cycles and Sectors, and SMEthod was part of that call. And there is also the website for our project, and there you can find public reports and that videos and that kind of stuff from the project. And naturally, if the call is about segmentation, our project is also been about segmentation, and we have the idea is to develop and improve methods for that purpose, and also to be used in determining optimal targeting and timing of support measures for SMEs. And we have had 7 partners from 5 countries, coordinated by ASM in Poland, and then Spain, UK, Cyprus, and Finland. VTT from Finland. And our role as VTT, main task in the project has been to compile a policy brief based on the findings in this project. And that's why this today we will focus on the perspective of policy. So there has been a lot of other activities in the project as well, but maybe we present them in other occasion. And just to show that there has been interest on EU side alongside on this topic of segmentation. So there is also in this same call 2 other projects, Oasis and Watson, and they have also studied the same subject. But this is very briefly introduction from the project perspective, and now we continue with Matthias about the findings and insights. So go ahead, Matthias.
Okay, good morning, everybody, from my side. And thank you very much indeed for joining this breakfast event, the first in a new series. Very exciting. So I will share my screen, and I will just wait just a minute. This one or this one? Does everybody see how to tackle structural barriers?
Yes.
Okay. So I would like to start with a breakfast slide for the occasion. So this is a croissant. It's what you wish for if you really want to have a special breakfast, at least in Belgium, my home country. And a croissant is actually, the word comes from the French verb croître. It means to grow. So croissant actually means literally growing. But this growing interest, or the interest in growth, is not only from the perspective of this piece of food, but also basically in innovation support. That is the very aim of it all. So I would like to kind of compare a croissant to a growth firm. And this kind of focus in policy has been very much indeed on growth firms. This has started way back. Finland was one of the forerunners on this, even 2008, 2005, the focus switched on growth firms. But I would like to start by saying that although the focus has been very much on growth firms, there are a lot of other firms out there, a lot of other SMEs. And when we think about innovation support and policy, we should always have, in my opinion, the whole distribution of firms in the back of our mind. And this brings us back to the idea of the project, is that you would need to segment, because different kind of firms need different kind of support, and you would need to match the right instruments to the right target groups. So how come that not all those firms are growth firms, are really growing hard? So one of the reasons is that there are some barriers. And today I would like to specifically focus on, and that's often forgotten, on the barriers that support agencies and their policymakers are facing. Typically, research has focused a lot, for good reasons, on the barriers that the firms themselves are facing. But as we think in terms of ecosystems, it's good to look at every actor and which barriers those actors are facing. Well, support agencies and their policymakers are one of them. So that's the focus for today. The first thing we kind of found, and this is maybe nothing new, like many of the other results we have today, but nevertheless very important to restate things and to re-summarize, to also realize that actually a lot of things are changing, but also a lot of things are still on the agenda, and they were already 10 years ago. So it's important. So the first thing we found is that while this project, this SMEthod H2020 research project, was entering the arena from the perspective of the firm and basically direct public support, mainly financing, there are other kinds of support that are increasingly important. While this is the focus, we actually saw through our interviews and through the research that different levels are important when you think of structural barriers. Levels below the firm and on higher level. So if you think about the croissant, you could say that, okay, you cannot bake a nice croissant if you don't have the right ingredients. For example, if you don't have the right team. You have to run projects maybe within so that you can come up with this nice croissant. That's the project level. That's a different level than the firm level in terms of support. Supporting firms and the agency activities is different than, and the agency activities related to that are different than supporting projects. They are overlapping, but they are not exactly the same. And then on a higher level than the firm, of course, the ecosystem matters a lot. What is the oven you use? What is the oven you use to bake the croissant? And also industry, you need to know exactly the industry if you want to be able to support that firm. So as this is a European project, I want to underline that the Finns are very much ahead, or have been gathering, let's put it that way, have been gathering a lot of valuable information on those topics. We have other countries in the consortium and in Europe in general that know less about those topics. And so the information is gathered not only for Finland, but basically for the whole EU. So it's kind of sharing best practices. Now, what are the barriers that we distilled from our discussions with agencies that support innovation activities in SMEs and with their policymakers? So we have distilled 10 barriers. There would have been more, but we saw this 10 as the most important, recurring while talking to several people. And on the one hand, we have demand side barriers. On the other hand, we have supply side barriers. And I would like today, obviously, there is we are short in time, but I would like to focus mainly on the demand side, because the demand side of support, meaning the SMEs themselves. So basically, the support agencies pointed out that there are clear barriers at the demand side that prevent them of kind of reaching more growth firms and reaching more growth. The most important is definitely the lack of ambition. And ambition can mean different things here. It can, of course, mean most obviously the willingness to grow for those firms. And we actually saw from some recent research from Etla Tieto in 2015, the number showed that 12.5% of the starting firms are growth oriented. So only 12.5%. Nevertheless, a decade earlier, it was something like half of that. So we are on a good track, but it's a very hard work. And it's basically adding one by one really growth oriented firm, and then even less firms that really grow. But lack of ambition also shows up, and I refer here especially to Finland, in that people are not aware of support mechanisms enough. And especially the interest in European funding is basically suboptimal. It could be much better. And this is maybe not a problem in terms of money, because you may get the money elsewhere. You don't need to go to Europe for it if you are sharp enough, if you are ambitious enough. But the problem is that if you don't enter those networks, you may lose out on a lot of opportunities. So it's kind of how to raise that interest in Europe is kind of an important topic. And it's also on the agenda right now here in Finland, so that's a good thing. And then there is a lack of, so basically there's lack of ambition. We should pay more attention to that. That's recommended. And if you think about selection criteria, ambition is of course one of them, but it could even get more attention. I talk for all European countries now. And also giving growth chances to everybody is pretty important. So innovation is one way to grow. There are other ways. So basically, the main aim should be growth. The lack of diverse teams is a second barrier that is important. And the way the way to go around that, and there are a lot of good, for example, I think about the Talent Boost program of them. That's a fantastic program. So the focus on capabilities, teams building, and talent attraction is very important here and recommended. Again, those recommendations are for all EU countries, as are all others. And then another point on the demand side is that certain sectors and regions have different kind of access to talent. And this is really a problem, because this increases the disparities between those regions. So innovation disparity is rising. And this is something that we have not really thought about too much. Of course, it has been always on the agenda, regional policy and so on, versus innovation policy. But now it seems that this inequality is really on the agenda. And if you are an innovation actor, you have to pay increasingly attention to find a balance between pushing that innovation and kind of balancing with not rising inequality too much. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Now, quickly on the supply side of support, we found barriers that apply specifically to the support agencies, namely the lagging skill development in the support ecosystem. So skills are important on the SME side, of course, but they are as important on the agency support side and policy side. And this is important to stress. Then also a barrier that is faced by the agencies is the lack of resources for policy implementation. And this is very problematic because policymakers and politicians rather introduce all kinds of new instruments and budgets for them, but they often forget the implementation part of it. And often that is not fully clear how much resources need to be reserved for implementation. So for implementation, basically implementation is a key factor in the impact that can be reached, and therefore it should not be forgotten. But most importantly is the lack of stability in policy as a barrier. And we saw that in Poland. That may not be surprising given the recent history. Poland is one of our consortium members as a country. But we saw that also being mentioned in Finland, and that may be coming as a surprise. We know that the Finnish innovation system has gone through some serious shocks, and maybe that is the reason why people now stress the fact that policy and innovation policy should be stable. And this is important because if companies want to make investments in innovation, they need to know roughly what's going to happen, and they need to trust the local innovation system and policy and politicians. So then there are, of course, also gaps in support that are actually being covered by European actions currently. There is still the complexity of the support system, and from a client perspective, meaning the SME, this is still very problematic. This has been mentioned in the evaluation of the Finnish innovation system in 2009, run by Ylä Anttila and colleagues. But it's still there, and this complexity can still be streamlined further. The lack of matching private funding is a problem, but could be via public-private partnerships with balanced risks could be kind of improved. And then, of course, the supporting grand challenges is a kind of high on the mission-oriented policy agenda of the Commission, trickling down to the member countries. But the problem is that many of the agencies that support innovation have not translated that yet in actions, in monitoring, and in kind of ex-ante impact assessments. So there's work to be done there. And also we are working on that, for example, at VTT in our units. Well, maybe to close is that you could argue that, okay, yeah, you mentioned all those barriers and there's not too much new in it, and also your recommendations we know about. But this is exactly the nature of structural barriers. They are structural. Many of them are known for a decade. So, but still they have to be tackled. And I want to conclude by saying that the COVID-19 crisis is a superb occasion to seriously reconsider this list of 10 and to tackle those structural barriers. Know that in any case we will see restructuring going on most probably during the coming years. And if you look at the right-hand column, expected effect of COVID-19 of each of the barriers, they are all very relevant still. They will be by nature. And We will. So I would like to conclude here by saying you deserved some more coffee, very good coffee. And I would like to also say that the policy brief is going to be sent around to all of you, and there you will see more detail, and you can always send us comments later on. Would be good to talk if you want to talk about this and share and do things together. Thank you very much. Maybe if you grab a coffee while Hannu from Business Finland is sharing his screen to continue the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthias and Markku. This is Hannu Kemppainen from Business Finland, and I will continue from here. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for BTT and the SMEthod project for giving me this opportunity to say a couple of words on behalf of Business Finland in this context. I thought, let's see if I can change the slide. I thought I would talk about four things. First, in order for you to understand where I come from, I'll say a few words about the main drivers of growth from our perspective. Then I will tell you more about Business Finland and how our thinking links to the barriers we just heard about. There are some clear linkages there. Then if we have some time, I will probably say some words about the policy trends mentioned in the draft version of the policy brief written by the SMEthod project, and then some closing remarks at the end. Let's start with the main drivers of growth. Business Finland is all about accelerating, catalyzing sustainable growth. So we in Business Finland try to understand what are the drivers of growth and what can be our role in accelerating growth. And the main finding there is that the growth in Finland, it doesn't come from us doing more work, working more hours. It comes from productivity development. And the productivity development is not really only about doing things more efficiently. It is actually mainly about doing things more wisely. So renewing our businesses all the time in such a way that we produce products and services which are exciting and meaningful for the end customers around the world in such a way that they are willing to pay more and more for our products and services. And where this productivity development comes from, it comes from investments in immaterial things like knowledge and renewal. So it really is about renewing our businesses all the time. Since 1995, the economic growth in Finland can be explained almost entirely by R&D investments and ICT-related investments. The fixed investments for production, they follow the good ideas. The growth doesn't work the other way around. And when investing in renewal, there are, in our experience, two rather different mechanisms. First of all, there is this small-scale iterative development going on in all companies. which invest in new technologies and in new tools and processes and so on, and they develop their production and services based on those. But that development in present world happens in any way because of the commercial pressures the companies are facing. So the healthy companies are investing in these things by themselves, and they have sources for funding for those things if they are healthy companies. So the role of the public sector and Business Finland, for example, is more about accelerating radical renewal of businesses and companies. So we try to understand where we could have where we really can make the difference. And of course, when we talk about radical or ambitious R&D, we know from research that there is a bunch of aspects that create the rationalities for government intervention. A large part of the benefits coming out of R&D will be monetized by some other companies than the actual performer of R&D. We know that when we are creating totally new things, radical innovations, then the private funding sector don't have the data to do a reliable risk analysis on these projects and companies, and therefore they are not willing to fund all the projects that would be beneficial to the society. And of course, when we are talking about ecosystem level changes and transformations, then the private sector often needs a trusted third partner to facilitate the discussions at the very beginning and to help the companies to create a common growth vision, which then becomes actionable and creates this renewal, structural renewal. So what is Business Finland's role in all of this? As I said, we are all about catalyzing sustainable growth, both for individual companies, global growth for individual companies, and we want to help companies and research organizations to create world-class ecosystems, ending up in more bigger transformations in society and in the economy. We do boost innovations, but also exports, and we attract investments and visitors to Finland. As tools, we have very soft funding instruments, grants, and very soft loans. We provide advice and coaching, and we have very wide networks, both domestic and international, that can help our customers. And of course, we also have thematic programs combining these tools to accelerate larger scale changes in the society. And SMEs have a really big role in our activities. They are at the very core of our strategy. We want to help SMEs to double their R&D investments and exports by the year 2025. It's an ambitious goal, but we are working to get that done. Of course, SMEs also have a very important role in new ecosystems. They often are the outside of the box thinkers in ecosystems and creating the truly new ideas together with research organizations. SMEs also are important members of the networks that attract foreign direct investments in Finland, and they are major players in the tourism industry in Finland, of course. And this importance of SMEs also is shown in our funding figures. Out of the 571 million euros funding awarded to different organizations last year, almost 300 million euros went for startups and SMEs as innovation funding. And that shows the importance of SMEs for us and their role in our activities. When we look at the resources of Business Finland, the resources we have available for innovation funding for SMEs, it can be seen that the numbers go up and down, especially the blue bars representing the grants, which really are the most effective tool for catalyzing radical renewal and networking in the innovation environment. And therefore, it really is true that also in Finland, we would need more stability in innovation policies and more resources for policy implementation. As Matthias said, for companies which are thinking about strategic investments in R&D in Finland, they don't care what the figures are 2 months from now. They want to understand what the innovation environment and the incentives look like for years to come, and perhaps in some cases for decades to come. When we look at individual companies, these are the things that we look at in these companies. First of all, we look at the potential competitive advantage this company can create. So this is all about ambition. We want to see companies that really want to challenge themselves and challenge the current ways of thinking and doing things in their industries. Of course, we are interested in the impact in Finland especially, and we know the value of diverse teams in these companies. We know from research that growth companies with versatile competencies and diverse teams do better than those concentrating only on research or technology or so on. And of course, private funding is extremely important because, first of all, the public sector cannot carry the whole risk in innovative businesses. And it is not enough to go through the R&D phase. The companies need to have some kind of understanding where they could find the resources to go global after the R&D phase, and in fact start the market dialogue with global markets as soon as possible when developing new things. And of course, it all boils down to the will to grow, how the owners and boards are committed to growth, because if the will to grow is there, then there is always ways to create the capabilities to do that. Business Finland, as I said, has many types of different funding instruments available, very soft funding instruments ranging from very small innovation vouchers to several millions worth of R&D grants and loans. And we do see that the system, the support system in Finland is rather complex still. We know that the Finnish system is more streamlined than many other systems, but for example, on regional level, we have tens of different actors and it is understandable that the situation might be confusing for our customers, and of course it is difficult for us to create a smooth service path starting from local regional services to the global marketplace in an environment like this. But we do a lot of effort in creating these strategic partnerships with local actors to create this smooth service path I mentioned. And at least this far, there have been some gaps also. Maybe the most important gap has been after the R&D phase, which can be funded by Business Finland. Often these companies still need large amounts of funding for piloting their new technologies in large scale pilot plants, for example, or they need a lot of funding for large scale global projects for going global. And at that point, they often don't have the private funding available yet for these purposes. Some policy trends have been mentioned in SMEthod's draft policy brief, and it is true that the grand challenges described by the UN's Sustainable Development Goals are coming up in many countries. In Finland, it is easy to combine these two because these grand challenges often also represent the most lucrative business opportunities available at the moment. There is a big need and growing need for addressing these challenges, and if we can produce solutions for them, then we have growth businesses at our hands. So they are very much in the focus of Business Finland also. It is also true that the innovation policies, the borders of innovation policies will continue to become less clear. Many people say that we shouldn't talk about innovation policy, we should talk about policies for innovation, because it is not only about education and research and R&D incentives. It is as much about, or even more about, creating an entrepreneurial environment which encourages you to take risks. It is about developing the market environment where you can bring new innovations to challenge the old ways of doing things, and so on and so forth. And also smart specialization, the regional aspects of innovation, is also one of the important topics, but combining that with the last thing, the very tight competition for scarce resources. It is our understanding that in Finland we can't afford to waste any valuable resources, not funding, not smart people. We want to fund and help the best companies and the best projects wherever they come from in Finland. In the right there, you see the impact goals we are talking about at the moment in Business Finland's ongoing strategy process. The top row there, economic prosperity and the attractiveness and competitiveness of innovation environment, they are very familiar to us, and a new thing getting our attention at the moment is the sustainability issue, and of course the COVID pandemic has brought up the question of resilience in a very big way. Finally, I really want to thank the SMEthod project and VTT for this policy brief and the work you have been doing, because, as I said, we have a strategy process going on, and we will definitely benefit from the findings you have done. And in the long run, we have had tough times in our innovation system during the last decade, but in the long run, I'm really still very confident that we can make Finland one of the most attractive and competitive innovation environments in the world, and a place where world-class success stories can be created and will be created. So thank you.
Thank you, Hannu, very much for your insightful presentation from Business Finland perspective. And while we are waiting for Kalle to start presenting, I just say that we have in the chat, we don't have any questions at the moment, but some very good feedback for the presenters and all on this event altogether. So
Markku, one
please.
question.
Oh, is there a question? Okay, but we come back to after Kalles. We still have 8 minutes.
8 minutes, thank you. And I will maybe start. So, as you have heard, and maybe you know, Finland is very famous about innovation and digitalization, and we claim to be the superpower in here. And in many measures, we are number 1 in EU or all the world, and lately also number 3rd, the most innovative country in the whole world. And this sounds very good for us, but if you think about this from the SME perspective, the situation is a little bit different. And if you look this policy brief through, you can see that some countries are doing better for the SME purposes. And one reason for that is for sure that they have a larger internal markets, and also other capabilities like large regional hubs, for example, which we in Finland we don't necessarily have. And for us, it's a big thing for SMEs to jump over the Finnish larger client to serve, for example, the international large clients. So just jump from SME to international market. That's one challenge for Finland specifically. If you think about from RTO perspective, like from BTT perspective, it's for sure large companies, they have typically much more interesting, attractive challenges, and they have capabilities to take risk, invest, and manage different kind of R&D&I activities, which the SMEs does not necessarily have. And that's maybe the key thing if you think about how the RTO can approach SMEs, is that we have to be more effective, have easy to use competencies, capabilities, and solutions which bring value in the short term, and also support for the customers to not only to develop new technology but also apply the technology in use for their businesses. We know that SMEs are important for Finland. They are important for our economy. They are important for VTT also. And in almost every activities what VTT do, we have SMEs somehow involved in our normal project portfolio. And in addition, we have also developed some specific services for SMEs, and I will surely give you some glimpse about those, some concrete examples. One key thing is a certain kind of service and experiment platforms. For example, SMAC, which is Smart Machines and Manufacturing Competence Center here in Finland, in Tampere, run together with VTT Tampere University and Tampere University of Applied Science. And there the aim is to give easy access support for practical questions and also guidance for innovation and research activities, what the SMEs could do, and with which kind of a networks and partnership they could utilize. One specific there is also the sharing of infrastructure. So SMEs does not necessarily have capabilities and resources to invest into R&D&I infrastructures and test facilities. And as you heard, piloting is one of the bottlenecks there. But from a SMEC kind of competence center, we can offer easy accesses for the cutting edge infrastructures. And we have similar kind of offerings also in Micronova, for example, where SMEs they have the access for the Nordic's largest clean room facilities for MEMS manufacturing, but also they can rent office space in the same building next to the infrastructures. So one key thing is to make things easier for SMEs to engage to large entities. Then we have this kind of a innovation ecosystem here in Finland, and also we did this one key facilitator and creator of those, and the idea is that we can facilitate the engagement of SMEs to larger agendas and more ambitious agendas, together with different kind of RTOs and large companies. So it gives SMEs a platform for creating bigger targets and share resources, see results, and share risks together with the other SMEs and large companies. And when we are able to make those international, they can also benefit from the extensive networks nationally and internationally, which helps them to build a new kind of a business. So here the typical benefit for SMEs is not the funding as such, it's the access for the customer base, access for the networks, and access to the knowledge, what we can offer here. Then I also already mentioned the international networks and the importance of that, and we did this one of the key partners here in Finland to help companies to get access to the EU project and EU networks, and this same applies also from SMEs. So typically we engage SMEs to other EU arenas and EU project, but especially we have now driven this kind of digital innovation hub and different kind of a cascade funding projects. At the moment we did this, for example, coordinating 3 European level cascade project where we distribute almost 40 million euro EU funding for SME innovation project across EU. So the idea is that if SMEs have a R&D&I idea, we as a coordinator, we can then select and make calls for those initiatives, and then keep also funding and other support for that kind of needs. Maybe last concrete example is a launchpad concept. So VTT has established a deep tech incubator where the idea is that we can help early stage technology-driven, research-driven initiatives to grow to a concrete business. And we have done that VTT internally before, and now we are launching this same kind of a concept for externals also. So if external SMEs or other entrepreneurs have a bright idea and they need to access like a more deep depth knowledge and facilities, then they can apply for this program, and then we can help them to grow their business and grow their idea to concrete business, and then they can launch and build big things for Finland and for themselves. To conclude, maybe the key message is that if we think about the world, innovation world from a SME perspective, we should think about that, how we make the processes effective, straight to the point, and easy to access for SMEs. If we make things too complicated, too let's say hard to manage, then we are not able to offer them the competitive edge what we could do if we make things smooth and little bit pay attention about also the way how to make most out of these kind of policies and support functions for the SMEs could benefit from Finland and also in Europe. Thank you on my behalf. I guess now there is time for some question if needed.
Yes, there seems to be. First, thank you, Kalle, for presenting the actually quite broad services that VTT provides also to the SME sector. And it seems that we have 2 questions, comments from Leena Sarvaranta, and we could actually do so that if Leena is still online, you could, Leena, open your mic and perhaps
Thank you.
do it yourself, so I don't have to translate.
Thank you so much for this morning session. I got lots of energy. Sorry, I've been messing in the chat as well because it's so inspiring. I think we have great things, elements in place here at VTT at least, and also if we cooperate with the Business Finland, we will take steps further, and it would be really great to continue this later with you guys, because I think we will need something very soon for showing the Commission and the Brussels talk as well what we are doing really in practice, and it will help. It will certainly help in shaping the next Horizon Europe program, some parts of it into the direction where at least VTT can make a contribution in supporting the SMEs. So I just want to thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Leena, for your comments, and there seem to be a couple of other positive comments on this event and discussions and presentations on the chat, but no specific questions that I can see. So perhaps, there is one thing before we end. As mentioned, this is about to be a series, so perhaps if Matti has a short add on the next one. So we already have one more event in the pipeline.
Yes. So hello everyone. This is Matti Pihlänmaa from VTT. I don't know if you, Markku or Matthias, have this one slide, but that's not necessary. Just a quick teaser. So we're planning a next event, next breakfast seminar on June of the topic of transformative innovation policy and innovation public procurement. So as you heard in Hannu's and Matthias's presentations, there's now lots of discussion going on how to combine this traditional innovation goal of creating economic growth with this need for creating more transformative change, how to reach the SDGs and how to solve the grand challenges that we're facing. And it's not fully clear what is the implications for innovation policy if we wish to combine these rationalities. And one thing we're seeing right now is that there are lots of emphasis on demand side innovation policy measures, such as the innovative public procurement, in how to guide the innovation processes towards these societal needs, such as solving the climate change. So in the next breakfast seminar that is planned in June, we will discuss these topics, and you will all get an invitation to the event when the date is decided very soon. So, thank you.
Thank you, Matti, for introducing the next event. So I think my clock shows 9:05. We started 8:05. We were talking about having this in 1 hour, so we have actually made it in 1 hour. And I want to again thank you all the presenters, all the attendants, and looking forward to seeing you in this next event, the latest. So
Thank you. It was a
thank
pleasure.
you all. Bye bye.
Kiitos.